Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia and today I'm doing a tag video. This tag is called the new Windows and Mirrors tag created by my dear friend Pat from the channel Book Chat with Pat. And it's called the new Windows and Mirrors tag because there apparently was an older tag several years ago that had that same name, but it was a different tag. Pat created this tag inspired by a theory of educational, a curricular theory called Windows and Mirrors that she followed closely in her teaching career. I'm familiar with it too. In fact, the librarian who took over my job has a book club called Windows and Mirrors. And it is based on the work of a teacher and educational scholar named Emily Style. I will include links to Pat's explanation of this curricular theory in the notes. But basically, to boil it down and roll it over to a discussion about reading and booktube, it's the idea that reading and the study of literature offers you both windows and mirrors. The mirrors are the times where you see a glimpse of yourself in something that you are reading and you make a personal connection. You feel yourself reflected or you feel that you are seen. And a window is when what you are reading opens you up to a different perspective, a different experience, something outside of your own life and viewpoint. And both of them together lead to growth and empathy and connection. And then when you add on the booktube community and how our relationships and intersections with one another lead to these kind of windows and mirrors experiences, it's a recipe for good times, support, learning, growing, and that's what the tag is about and this topic is about. Something that was interesting to me when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about in this tag, I was stuck. I am very late to this party. I've been thinking about this topic for weeks because I kept thinking of too many books and too many people. The prompts specifically say pick a couple. I'll read them in a minute, but it doesn't say list every booktuber who is important to you. It says pick a couple that represent, there's a certain question, but still I thought, well, all these people. So I'm reining it in, but it's difficult. And also with the books. And then I got to thinking about how some people are both windows and mirrors for me. Some books are both windows and mirrors. So after I dithered and frittered away a few weeks, I am now actually going to attempt to hone it in and be specific and just talk about a couple of things and a few books, a couple of people. We'll see how I do. Number one, talk about the screen went dark. Very dramatic moment. Talk about a few books that served as mirrors to you, allowing you to see some aspect of your life experience reflected in a meaningful way. One of the early ones, and this is a set of books I'm going to hold up. I know they are now kind of problematic, but think about me being 7 or 8 years old and it's the 1970s and I get this set for my birthday. The Little House on the Prairie books. Yes, this exact one. It's holding up very well. I still read the Christmas episodes at Christmas time. And I'm aware now of the racist content that is also in the story. But back then, when I was reading the books, what really hit me was that I could relate to Laura Ingalls. And even though she was a girl living 100 years before me at least, in a different kind of family, in a different place, and all of the experiences that she was having, I related directly to Laura and her personality, her attitude, her point of view. Laura did not like being constrained into traditional roles for little girls at the time period. It takes place in the mid-1800s in America. And her constant irritation with her goody two-shoes sister, Mary, who always had clean clothes, hadn't messed up her hair, didn't talk back, didn't run wild. Mary was just a toot, and I loved Laura. As they grew up and their relationship deepened and Mary suffered hardships and lost her vision and everything. I was just so in on this set of books, and I read them again and again. So that was kind of a starting point of making a connection and seeing myself, even though the work was not about a girl exactly like me and my lifestyle, but kind of me transposed into another time period. More recently, some books that I have read that felt like mirrors to me. One of them was These Precious Days, which is a collection of essays by Ann Patchett. I really related, and so much of the things that she talks about in these essays really resonated with me. She has an essay in here called Three Fathers, where she talks about her dad and the two stepfathers that she has had in her life. And as I read it, I thought about how I also have three dads. I have my dad, a stepfather, and my father-in-law, and each of them have been essential and important to me in different ways. And her candor about their strengths and their weaknesses, all of it, I thought I could write my own response essay in this particular format. She talks about the difficulties of going on a big clearing out purge during 2020, which who did not do that? And I read it closer to the time period. I think this came out in 2021 or 2022, 2021. So it was very fresh. And just a lot of the things, her point of view, her style, it just really connected to me. And now that I'm talking about it, I feel like I need to go back and read my favorite essays again. Along that same vein, I think Elizabeth Strout's characters resonate and directly relate and mirror in many ways. Lucy Barton. Sometimes I feel like Lucy just sees me. Sometimes I feel like we're the same person, or we are very close friends maybe, because sometimes she really irritates me too. Which, I don't know, I guess I really irritate myself sometimes. So Lucy Barton, I'm only holding up one book in the series, but this is my favorite one. A lot of the things she says, and then other times I just think, wait, what? Really, Lucy? So, and I think that really makes it even better, because if somebody seems so close to your way of thinking, and then the ways that they diverge, you think, well, what about me? What does that say about me? So, Lucy, and what does it say about me that I also really, really love Olive? I love Olive Kitteridge. I know she's awful, but I love her so much. And a lot of times what she says, I think, well, that was really harsh, but she wasn't wrong. So I love Olive too. Now, the next one is pretty weird. You may think, what? How is this a mirror? It is a post-apocalyptic novel that takes place in Canada about a handful of survivors from a horrible pandemic who have formed a traveling symphony of musicians and actors. I'm not a musician. I'm not an actor. I'm not Canadian. It's not post-apocalyptic yet. But it's the way that she describes the world, and through the eyes of the characters. It's the way that their memories are described, their choice to live and see beauty now. The motto, because survival is insufficient, which is how they explain their mission to travel and deliver art to these small communities that have survived this terrible event, to stage Shakespearean plays and play symphonies from memory, from the scraps of music that they find in houses along the way. The way that she describes them going through houses and the content, like everything, I feel like if I was there, this is how I would feel, this is how I would see it, this is what I would value. And so that's why this one is a mirror, even though it is such a weird and different setting. And then finally, you thought I was going to leave this out, but I was just playing with you and I saved it up for last. It's Catcher in the Rye, of course. My favorite novel about somebody who is not like me at all, but I relate to him deeply. So Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield. I first read this when I was about 14, and I thought, I don't know if I am him or he's my best friend, but this guy is everything about him. So even though he's frustrating, even though I was worried about him, but he was so funny, I related to his point of view, his attitude. He reminded me a lot of a good friend that I had in high school. And so it was kind of a weird mirror of, is that me or is that somebody right next to me? And then as I've gone on through life, I keep coming back to it, and I never moved away from it. I still feel like there's a piece of me in there, but my vantage point has changed. So now I worry about him in different ways from an adult perspective, more like a parental or a teacher perch, instead of identifying with him side by side. But I still love Catcher in the Rye, even though it is about an affluent, grieving boy who is having a mental health breakdown in the late 1940s in New York City. The specific details don't line up, but the frustration with the adult world and the phoniness and all of that, I'm still there. I'm still there. So the second prompt is the one that really stopped me in my tracks, because it says, talk about a couple of booktubers whose reading is most like your own. Well, I immediately thought of every booktuber that I watch regularly, and I thought, no, I can't do everybody. So let's just talk about a few people. The question says, whose reading is most like your own? Some people I love to watch, and our reading is very, very different. I think of it like Venn diagrams, and some people, we have a big overlapping section in the center, and others it's very slim, but there's something about that booktuber's personality and style that I enjoy hearing them talk about books that I may not even ever read. And occasionally something that I do decide to go out on a limb and read, or we find some surprising moment of commonality. But that's not what the question's about. It's about the ones that I read the most like. So first of all, I have to bounce right back through the mirror to Pat, who tagged me, because Pat and I often joke that we share a brain. We see eye to eye on almost every topic. We read a lot of books in common and have the same responses. Not 100%, that would be boring, but we line up really, really closely, and we're not even surprised anymore, where we have kind of the same reaction at the same time, or we found out we were thinking about the same book at the same time. So Pat has to come first, but then there's a whole bunch more, and I'm going to name just a few. I'm going to leave someone out, and then I'm going to feel bad later. Okay, Priscilla from Evening Reader. We're constantly in dismay upon watching each other's videos because of what it does to our TBRs. It's always like, great, now I have to put that on my list. Thanks a lot. But isn't that a wonderful problem? And I've had a couple of times people get confused where they can't remember if they saw something about a book on my channel or Priscilla's channel. They were thinking, well, is that a lady? She's got glasses, kind of gray hair. Also, Melinda from A Web of Stories. We often are interested in the same books, share ideas back and forth, buddy reads, etc. I'm always excited when she has a book haul. There's always something in there I want to get, and we can give each other good advice about whether or not we think the other one would like that book or not, based on what we know of our reading habits. Debs from Rainer Reads. We both like to read very broadly in a given week or a given month. It's kind of all over the place in genre and time periods and links and moods, and we both really enjoy seeing what the other one has come up with to read. And we both have been purloining books from our parents' house, and so we have a lot in common in our reading tastes and sense of humor. Maria Andrea from Books and Bocadillos. We live in the same region of Texas, so we share an oppressive climate, although in the winter we share a delightful climate. But we also share a lot of taste in books and food and points of view about living in Texas at this time. We commiserate. She is not only a mirror but also a window, because she knows so much about Latinx literature and is broadening my horizons on that topic every time I see one of her videos. And I'm going to mention Sonia from Enthusiastic Reader, who's on a bit of a break right now, but We also are just really compatible in interests, and I love to hear her book reviews. I look forward to when she returns to filming. No pressure, Sonia. Um, but another great channel. And there's so many more. I could go on and on and on. But those are ones I think the actual question, who do you read the most alike? Those are the ones that come most to mind, except there's somebody else that I read very closely alike, but I have saved for the next part of the question, or maybe a couple people. So we'll get to them in a minute. All right, so that's the first half. The second half is about the windows. And the prompt is, number 3, talk about a few books that served as window frames to you, allowing you to see the reality of others outside your experience. So what I think is interesting about that question is that when I thought about some books, I thought my mind first went to international books. Like that's one kind of outside your experience, another place, another culture. Also, though, I thought about books that take place where I live, but through the eyes of a person who's living that life much differently than mine. And some of those are some of my favorite books as well. An example of that would be The Sentence by Louise Erdrich that I held up in the thumbnail. So this book takes place during 2019 and 2020. I was here in 2020. I know what that experience was like, or I know what my experience was like. But Louise Erdrich, who lives in Minneapolis, has written a novel that is the beginning of the plot is about her own bookstore. She's a minor character who sort of appears a couple times in the story, but it's really about a woman named Tookie who has been in prison for a while and then more recently is employed at this bookstore. And the bookstore becomes haunted by a ghost. And most of the people who work at the bookstore are indigenous, and that's a focus of this bookstore. It's a general bookstore, but it has an emphasis on indigenous literature. It's about Tookie and the store and the ghost and her husband. And then things take a dramatic shift because 2020 rolls along, COVID comes into the picture, and then as it gets to the summer, the murder of George Floyd and the protests. And all of this from the point of view of these people who were living there. Tookie in particular, she's got experiences as she's an indigenous woman who has been incarcerated and is married to a former police officer. And the tensions that arose from those dynamics and her fear for her niece when she becomes very active in the protests and her own role, and just the whole thing. It was such a different point of view, such a close-up view of some of the things that I only saw on TV during that time, and the intensity of the feelings. So this is a book that I really, really loved, one of my favorite characters, and just shifting something that I thought I knew a lot about and showing it to me from a completely different vantage point. Another book that did that as well is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. Now, all these are books that I've talked about and recommended before. This one, I read a lot of dystopian and post-apocalyptic literature. This is the second time that topic has come up in this video. There's a small Anishinaabe community in rural Canada, and they are used to, in the winter, occasional power outages during big snowstorms. Sometimes the power goes out for a couple days. Sometimes the phone or the internet goes down. No big deal. But one weekend, everything goes out one by one, and it does not come back on. They are very far from the nearest city. They don't know what has happened. And so part of it is that familiar setup of, okay, a terrible thing happened. What is it? What are we going to do? What's going to happen with human nature? But then it moves into this interesting territory about this community where some of the people have made a point to maintain and learn and pass on traditional skills. And other people are not. They're fully modernized. They're used to all the conveniences. And what happens when all the conveniences are gone and you need to use your own knowledge for survival? What about human nature? Are people going to come together? Are they going to fight? What happens when people get panicky about food supplies and safety? What if an interloper comes in from the outside and threatens everybody? So the different viewpoint again in a genre that I read a lot. And then there's a sequel. And I'm hoping that he writes a third and a fourth book, since the first two have seasonal titles: Moon of the Crusted Snow and Moon of the Turning Leaves. So, okay, winter, fall, where's spring and summer? Come on, Mr. Rice. Another book that was a window into a different experience than my own was Blackouts by Justin Torres. This is an experimental novel, essentially about two gay men, one younger and one older, in a kind of a mentor relationship. One is dying and he's wanting to pass on some essential knowledge and information to the younger man. And this was a book that kept me hopping, looking things up that I didn't know anything about censored, blacked out, suppressed gay history in America and elsewhere. And the main character, I think both of them are of Puerto Rican descent. And so there's nothing about their particular demographic that matches mine, but it was so compelling and fascinating. And so much of it, even though it was a fictional experimental novel, so much of it related or was based on actual people and events. I read it, it was a buddy read with my friend Michael, and we were just hopping, looking up all kinds of things. And then it was also a window into more literature, more international literature, because due to things referred to in Blackouts, we had to go on to read, my pile's getting ready to fall over, Kiss of the Spider Woman, which is an Argentinian novel by Manuel Puig, about two men in a prison cell. And then we also had to read Pedro Paramo, which is a Mexican surreal novel by Juan Rulfo. And and I think there was more to it. I mean, that's what first comes to mind, is the book was a domino effect. And so now whenever we read something that makes us feel like we have to read something else, we say, oh, we're having the Blackouts effect. So the windows, it was like one of those bizarre pictures where you see in, and then you can see the next level and the next level, and it just keeps going. It was one of those kind of experiences. And I want to throw in a nonfiction book, since I had one in the mirrors. And I'm going to put in Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Jacobs. If you have never read this slim memoir, it is a powerful narrative written by a woman who was enslaved, and she ran away. She did not leave town. She hid out for years in the town where she had run away so that she could stay close to her children. Harriet was owned by a man who ruthlessly pursued her, not knowing that she was literally under his nose for years and years. And she had, with the help of certain friends and relatives, she was able to stay near her children. And then it goes on to what happened later on. I don't want to give it away, because it's suspenseful, it's emotional, it's powerful, and it's all true out of our American history. That was another window book. There's so many more. I think every single book I have in this library, I could make a case for it, how it was a mirror or a window or both. And the last question, as you can possibly guess, is talk about a couple of booktube channels that have expanded your horizons, helped you to explore books or genres outside your comfort zone, or challenged you in some way. So I'm going to talk about a few more channels, and most of these are, I'm talking about them in terms of the windows, but they also many times are also mirrors. So one of them is Hannah from Hannah's Books. Hannah has a lot of content about nonfiction, and that is something that I don't read as heavily. I try to read at least one nonfiction book a month, but Hannah will profile 8 new releases from nonfiction every month, and she has such a dazzling array of thoughtful material. She talks about books that I had not ever heard of, but that sound so compelling. And she talks about literature too, and we also are very like-minded about classic literature in particular, or 20th century American fiction. Hannah has a calm style that is so completely different from mine, but I really, really enjoy listening to her. We got to meet in person, let's guess it's been about a year, and that was wonderful as well. So one person I want to mention is Roz from Scally Dandling About the Books, and we are both, I feel like she's both mirrors and windows. So we have a lot of books in common of interest, but then she also introduces so many things I hadn't heard of. And because she has a particular emphasis on reading internationally, I hear about things that I might not otherwise have noticed. I have really good odds that I'm going to like the book because we're compatible on the books that we have read in common. Also, Brian at Bookish for just really thoughtful reviews. There's fiction and nonfiction. There's some international stuff. There's some American political and historical content that I probably wouldn't have known about if I hadn't seen the reviews, and I found some really good authors that way, and just always thoughtful content that I like to think about and respond to. And then finally, two guys that have inflated my TBR and drained my wallets are Sean from Sean Breeds Books and Bob the Bookerer. Both of these guys, I can't get to the end of a video without, I have actually had to pause a video and put a book in a cart and then go back to the video because they bring up books that I had not heard of and then that I simply must have by the time they are done talking about them. Just the enthusiasm has an effect on me. And then Sean has all these great mystery guests that are international people, writers with all kinds of wonderful life experiences, different from mine. And I just never know what I'm going to hear about, but it's something that I wouldn't have found, something, I don't know. I'm all over the globe and all through space and time, and I just get so many great ideas. Okay, I feel like I've rambled on. I mean, that's the whole point of BookTube, is to make a connection, talk about books, learn something new, find commonalities, and then also appreciate differences and find new terrain to explore. And so the whole windows and mirrors thing is just a great concept. I really appreciate Pat coming up with this. I'm sorry it took me so long to getting around to talking about it. Pat tagged like 900,000 people. And then I'm gonna link everyone that I mentioned. And if you haven't made this video and it sounds like fun, give it a whirl. And otherwise, I hope you're having a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Let me know down in the comments if you can think of books for you that you think are windows or mirrors, or booktubers as well. And have a great day. Bye-bye.